from the book of 1 Kings, chapter 17, verses 7 through 16. As we celebrate the Mother's Day and honor our mothers, it is a great time to reflect on the love and the care that mothers have shown to us in this world. At least once in a year, we are reminded to pause and think about what the mothers have done to us and to this world. There's a church in West Virginia called Mother's Day Church. And when I looked it up, the history of that church is very interesting because that's where the Mother's Day started. I didn't know that until I looked it up. Anna Jarvis was a member of that Methodist church in West Virginia who was inspired by her mother to do some work during the 1850s time. She started something called Mother's Work Day Clubs. During the Civil War, she called together all of these clubs and members and friends, club members and friends, and asked them to make a pledge that friendship and goodwill not be a casualty of the war. So they wanted to show friendship and goodwill to all, regardless of friends or enemies. And Anna Jarvis became a genuine peacemaker after the war, if you look at that history also. She and her friends through these clubs tended to a lot of soldiers and fighters who fought from both sides. Regardless of what side they were, they did not pay attention to what side they were there. They were given care and food and treatment and medical assistance wherever could need it. So that's what started the Mother's Day. And they called it Mother's Friendship Days for a long time. And later on, it was officially announced and approved as Mother's Day. It's just a background of Mother's Day if you didn't know that. But that was really great to see that it started from a church in West Virginia. Hospitality is a mark of a great mother, as Anna Jarvis did during that time. She gave food and shelter to people who were affected by the war at that time. And regardless of what side they were fighting on, they gave them shelter in her house, and many other friends housed those people who were left homeless because of the war at that time. So hospitality of a good mother always will be remembered. And today I wanted to talk about a hospitable mother who was a great mother. But the Bible and many of the world preachers remember her as the widow of Zarephath. But more than a widow, I remember her as a hospitable mother. Many times the Bible looks at these people as widows or widowers because of the society at that time were looking at their family status and referring them to as such. But as a mother, she was a very faithful mother, a very strong mother who tended her for only child. And here comes a prophet. You can consider him as a pastor if you want. But he came and asked her for some water first. And when she turned around and go to get some water for him, he always called out to her and said, "Hey, take some bread with you." Sounds like a pastor, isn't it? Because if you have asked for something from a pastor, he asks you to do something, he will probably ask you something else more than that. So she turned around and said, "Well, I was going to get you water, but I don't have any bread to give you. I have only some flour left, and because of the famine in the land, they were all affected by that." And the mother was very desperate. And she turned around and said she didn't have any food or bread, and she has whatever left is the flour and oil that she was going to make the last meal and probably will die after that. That's what she. So you can see the desperate words coming and see the looks on her face if you can imagine how desperate that mother would be when you have a child who cannot be fed and they were planning to die after this. So this is one occasion where the motherhood came up. And she said, "I have a child and I have to feed him." But at the same time, this prophet told her that you go and do first and make food for me first. And your flour will not go down and your oil will never end dry. That's what he told him. She probably thought for it for a second. Would I take his word for it or no? But as a mother of faith, I think she paused for a second and said, the God of Israel, she didn't know the God of Israel. She was a Gentile woman. That's what we read there. But the prophet was passing by that time during that time. And she anyway trusted in his God, the living God, and she made some food for him, bread for him, and water for him. And lo and behold, she never had any famine affected her after that. She had plenty of food, never ran dry in her oil or in her flour that she could sustain on. So there are two mothers actually listed in the book of First Kings, where Prophet Elijah talked about this widow of Zarephath. And there is another woman that we similarly see, which is hospitable to another prophet, the successor of Elijah, who is Elisha, Prophet Elisha. In the Second Kings, we read that. He was also entertained and given hospitality by a woman. She was not a widow, but she was a person who had been married for years and did not have children. And that is Prophet Elisha who went through that place, and she gave him shelter in her house and fed him several times. And one day the prophet asked her, what do you want from me? You are giving me all this hospitality every time I pass by. You invite me to your house. So she said, I don't have any children. So he gave her a promise that next year when I come through this place, you will have a child. And lo and behold, she did have a child. So hospitality is very powerful. It takes a lot of sacrifice and faith to be hospitable. Hospitality doesn't mean that you are being hospitable to the friends and families that we are very used to. We like our friends, we like our families, so we give hospitality to them, we care for them, and we invite them for meals and take them out with meals and have fun with them. But how about strangers? How about the ones who are not in our comfort zone? That is what the sacrificial or radical hospitality that the Bible teaches us. Our hospitality and our love and our care and compassion needs to go beyond our comfort zones to the ones who are not comfortable that we're dealing with, the outcasts of the society, the Gentiles, as we see here. That is where the hospitality of these mothers come in. Even though they were not of Jewish origin, they were entertaining these prophets of Jewish origin. They were following the doctrines and the teachings that these prophets were giving them, and they trusted them. They trusted that there is a living God who is working through these prophets. So it takes a lot of faith and sacrifice when it comes to hospitality. You have to sacrifice your time, you have to sacrifice your comfort zones, and go beyond the normal comfort zones that we are used to. So in this particular instance that we see in the woman at Zarephath, she was being hospitable in the face of extreme scarcity. When you say extreme scarcity, she was completely gone, beyond our imagination, that she would be dead after the last meal that they were going to take. So as a woman, she was low social status, basically, and also as a widow. That's what she was referred to in the Bible. She didn't even have a name named there. So as a widow and a woman, they're considered to be lower in the class of society, at society's class at that time. And she was weak in wealth, and she was weak in her social standing, but she was strong in her faith, and she was strong in her hospitality. So the great hospitality that she showed to this prophet of God gave her so much blessing in this world that it is written in the living word for years and generations to come to meditate on and learn from. So it is a sacrificial hospitality of trusting God's promise. Hospitality is not about ourselves. It is about trusting God that God will provide for us and others' needs if we share our blessings with others. It would have taken a lot of faith for this woman to do what the prophet told her. make me bread for first with the flour you have. Would I do it if I was only flour left for my child? Probably I would have told him, let me make the bread for my child first, and then I will give you the bread after that. But that's not what she did. She said, we read there that she listened to him, and he obeyed what he told her to do. So he trusted. And it is in the extreme scarcity, that is what sacrificial hospitality is all about. It is also, it's not a convenient one. Hospitality is not always convenient. It is not to be hospitable when it is convenient for us. Hospitality is even when it is inconvenient, even when it is uncomfortable. We have to extend the hospitality, and this mother showed that through their hospitality. It is not always feasible either. Sometimes financially, we think that I don't have the money to help support these people. I wish I had the money. But whatever money you have, you can still use it. That's just like this woman of Zarephath did. The mother, the great mother of Zarephath that I call her. Because even with the little thing that she had, she gave to the prophet and the man of God. Jesus taught us in the Gospels, we read that seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness first, and all the other things will be added to you after that. That's our principle of faith that we are following from Jesus. So it is not only an act of sacrifice, it's also an act of trust in a God, that we believe that God is able to provide for us, even in the midst of scarcity. The power of hospitality is very big. As you look at this, what happened afterwards, after this next passage, will tell us about a thing that happened there. Not only there was a powerful blessing that happened, that her flour never ran out, her oil never ran out. That's a great miracle that happened. But even more after that her son fell ill, and the only child, and he died later on at some point. And then she was broken. The only child, she didn't have a husband, she had only one child, and he died. And then he prayed to the living God through the prophet, and the prophet prayed for the child, and the child was raised from death. So the power of hospitality is great. It will bring miracles in our lives when we extend our hospitality to others. In Genesis, remember how Abraham and Sarah didn't have children for a long time. 25 years since God gave them the promise that they will have a child and he will become the father of nations. And they probably lost all hope in this after 25 years of having no children. And one day while Abraham was sitting outside his tent in his house, there was two people, strangers passing by. He hosted them. He invited them to his house and was hospitable to them and asked them to stay in their house. And when they left, they gave him a promise that by this time next year, Sarah is going to have a baby. And you all know that Sarah laughed at it because she was 99 years old at that time, and how can somebody like that have a child? But that's what God's promise does. It will bring miraculous things in our lives, even beyond our expectations. When you are being hospitable, those were two strangers. But in Hebrews, when we read in Hebrews about this particular instance, we read that do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. These two people that Abraham entertained were angels. He didn't know that. Those two angels were the two who went to Sodom and Gomorrah later on, and they destroyed the cities. Those were two angels, and Abraham did not know that. So when we get opportunities come on our ways, remember that God has sent somebody as angels so that you can show your hospitality to them. There are hidden miracles and powers behind the hospitalities that you do. Sacrificial hospitality will make room for God's miracles in our lives. When we offer hospitality to others, we also are imitating God. God is the great giver of hospitality. Through Jesus Christ, God welcomes us into his family forever as our eternal home. God has been gracious to us, so we need to be gracious to others. God is never indebted to anybody. We are indebted to God. Whatever we receive from God as blessings are gifts from God. A lot of times we give back to God thinking that we are giving something back, giving to God. No, we are not giving to God, we are giving back to God from what God has given us. Our time, our energy, our money, whatever we have. It is all God's gift in this world. He is never indebted to us. So a trust in a living God makes us more hospitable than what we are today. So the woman of Zarephath had nothing but gave everything that she had, but received everything that mattered in return. God sending Elijah to the widow of Zarephath, or the mother of Zarephath, tells us something about hospitality, that God may be sending someone specifically to our way one of these days, or any time that we see somebody in need. So what looks like a random opportunity for being hospitable may be a divine appointment from God. So remember that. God is going to bring somebody and show us the hospitality can bring miracles in our lives. Then of course we need to remember that when we offer hospitality to someone in need, we are also ministering as Jesus' hands and feet. As Jesus had told us that I was in need and I was a stranger, I was in prison. You did all this to me, and you did all these things, and it is like you are doing it to me. That's what Jesus said. Whatever you did to one of these least of these brothers of mine, you did it for me. So radical hospitality and sacrificial hospitality is something that we ought to practice. If we don't have that, we need to practice that. Even not to our friends, but also to our enemies as well. There was a story that I read in an article, that there was a boy who used to sell things house to house. And we know some of us don't like that, people coming and knocking at their doors, your doors for selling something. But this boy was trying to make money for his school, and he was paying his studies and helping his family through selling things from door to door. So one day while he was walking from house to house, he was so tired and hungry, and he did not sell a lot on that day. And he was so hungry, and he knocked at the door of a house and asked for some water. And when the woman opened the door, the mother of the house opened the door and looked at this boy who was tired and so looking tired in his eyes, and thought he was in need of some food. So instead of giving him a glass of water, she gave him a glass of milk. And he did not want to drink that milk because he didn't want to pay for that or anything. So he said, I don't want milk. And she said, no, my mother taught me that I should be hospitable to other people, even strangers. So please have this milk. And he drank that milk and went away. And years went by, and this lady was sick with a rare disease, and she was admitted into a hospital a few miles away from her own town. And that several years after that. And she had a rare disease that did not have much treatment at that time, so she had to go to the next town to get a treatment in the hospital. And she was admitted in the hospital, and there was a specialist in that hospital who treats this particular disease. His name was Dr. Howard Kelly. And as soon as she was admitted and the doctor came and looked at her, it was Dr. Kelly who came and looked at this woman, and immediately he recognized this woman. And this woman was the woman who gave him the milk when he was in school, going from house to house selling things. And then he introduced himself to her, and then he took special care for her from the hospital, and on the way she came back to recovery, and she had a huge financial debt because of that treatment. It close to $20,000 years ago. It's a big time money at that time. So when the bill came, the doctor called the office and said, bring me the bill. And the story says like this, that when they brought the bill, he attached a check of $20,000 to it, and then wrote something in the bill that said, this bill He's paid in full with one glass of milk and gave everything back. That is what the power of hospitality is about. Let us be hospitable as Jesus has been hospitable to us. Even when we were strangers and sinners, God loved us and sent His only Son to save us from our sins. So let us show that care and compassion and hospitality to others as we go from this place. And remember our mothers who have been hospitable to us. Even when we were rebellious, they have been gracious and loving and caring to us. So we honor our mothers, and let's, like our mothers, be hospitable beyond our comfort zones as we go from this place. May the good Lord bless us with these words. Amen.